Bush Rove-era Republicans have been so effective for so long at using wedge issues to drive the religious right to the polls. It would be novel, at least, if a Democrat were able to drive even the tip of a wedge between the religious and the right. In our fourth story on the countdown, Senator Barack Obama trying to make his case to faith-based voters. He'll have a big high-profile chance to do that tomorrow night when he and Senator John McCain appear for the first time together at the Saddleback Civil Forum. The two candidates taking questions from the pastor of the nation's fourth largest congregation, Saddleback Church in Orange County, California. Each candidate will be interviewed separately for an hour on issues of faith. Abortion is expected to be a prime topic, but also global poverty, AIDS, the Constitution, the presidency, and the role of the U.S. in the world. For McCain, the timing's intriguing, since this week conservatives rounded on him after he floated the prospect of choosing a pro-choice running mate, like former Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge or Senator Joe Lieberman of the Connecticut for Lieberman Party. Senator Obama, meanwhile, is trying to cut into McCain's lead among white evangelical voters, which polling suggests is softer, but not all that much softer than what President Bush had. Intriguingly, Obama already leads McCain among all faith-based groups other than evangelicals. Now, as for Rick Warren, the pastor bringing these two candidates together, he's an evangelical heavy hitter, the writer of the book Purpose-Driven Life. But he is seen by some fellow evangelicals as too willing to soft-pedal issues like abortion. In an interview with Andrea Mitchell on Hardball tonight, he embraced a broader agenda.
I think a lot of people are kind of in the middle who say, you know, I think this party gets this right, and I think this party gets this right, and I think there's a common ground area that needs to be staked out, maybe that is post-partisan, that allows for people to look at the whole spectrum instead of just voting party line.
Let's bring in the senior policy analyst for Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, Rob Boston. Hi, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Do you think, honestly, that Senator Obama has a chance of earning the votes of a significant portion of white evangelical voters?
Well, if you look at some of the recent elections, they have been very close. He doesn't have to pull off that many to make a difference. Of course, the challenge is to find a way to do that doesn't isolate the voters who consider themselves secularists, because that's a significant block as well.
How significant a block is that? That's a term that you never hear in polling.
Yes, from the data I've seen, it could account for as much as 10 to 15% of the electorate, which is not a number to be sneezed at.
How much of the prospects of Obama winning over religious voters, how much of that owes to a change in the thinking of religious voters? And how much of it owes to Obama's particular appeal, the policies he supports, the way he's campaigning?
I think it's a little bit of both. We're hearing a lot these days about the so-called new breed of younger evangelicals who aren't so interested in the old issues of opposing abortion and opposing gay rights and same-sex marriage. Supposedly these folks want to move on, they want to adopt environmentalism and poverty and fight AIDS around the world. This may be, you know, a media phenomenon, or it may be something real. I think it's a little early to tell. I think the religious right, as it's been traditionally constituted, still has a good bit of strength left, still has a kick. But there's definitely a tension there, the old guard versus this younger breed, and it's really too early to tell how that's going to shake out.
We saw some of those politics in action this week, with the McCain campaign seeming to float this trial balloon on a vice presidential pick who is not pro-choice. One Ohio activist, a guy named Phil Burris, said that choice will end his bid for the presidency and spell defeat for other Republican candidates, even threatening down-ticket Republican politicians if McCain chose somebody who was pro-choice. If evangelical voters make up 20 or 25% of the electorate, what proportion of those are single-issue voters that would see an issue like abortion as a litmus test?
Well, you know, a guy like Phil Burris is a representative of that old guard that I talked about a moment ago. I'm familiar with him and what he believes, and that's where he comes from. Now, these guys huff and they puff and they make a lot of noise, but at the end of the day, I think what McCain was counting on is that on election day they really don't have anywhere else to go. I mean, you could vote for Bob Barr, I guess, but everybody knows that he's not going to do very well, and there are other third-party candidates out there. The fact is that what McCain is, I think, hinging on is this sort of fear of Obama that's very prominent among the religious right groups right now. If you look at their websites and read their publications, as they do on a daily basis, you just see that they're really building this guy up as this really just awful force, and not somebody you want to let replace John Paul Stevens on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Rob, do you think that the forum that's going to take place tomorrow in Orange County, the Saddleback Church Forum, do you think a forum like that is a good idea? Do you think having the two presidential candidates meet on the same stage, even if only for a moment, together for the first time in this general election campaign at a forum on faith, is the kind of thing that undermines the traditional and constitutional division between church and state?
I think there's simply too much religion in our political system. We've been through this already. We've had these types of forums. We know what these guys believe. We know they're Christians. We know they go to church. If you look at the polling data, the average American is saying the things that they are concerned about are energy prices, the mortgage crisis, the war in Iraq, the recession. Are they going to be able to keep their jobs? Real bread and butter issues, paying the bills. To go back and talk about God again and Jesus and Christianity and the Bible and ask what's your favorite Bible verse and get into all that, we've been there, we've done that. I think the average American is saying, okay, I'm satisfied. Let's move on to some really more pressing issues.
Rob Boston, Senior Policy Analyst for Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. Thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.